Hi guys, it's Rachel, and today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about garden planning and specifically how to figure out how much time you need for something to grow, because it's not as easy as just looking on the back of the seed packet and seeing the little number of days till harvest, as I am finding out in my second year here gardening. And I'm gonna go ahead and apologize if I sound a little congested right now. I am. I've been like ever so slightly sick for the past week. There was one day where I was really sick, and then the rest of the time it's just been like kind of hanging on by a thread, not letting me go. Otherwise, I feel fine, just a little congested. So I'm sorry if I sound just a little bit sick right now. So the first thing I want to talk about is on the back of your seed packet. Most of the time you will see days till harvest on it. And basically I am learning that that number is days till harvest in ideal settings. It doesn't necessarily mean you plant the seed on this day, exactly 65 days later you will be getting a harvest. There's a couple of things to take into account when you're looking at that number. First of all is germination time. So the germination time is tacked on to the front of that number of days. So if your seed packet says that it's 65 days until harvest, then and then it takes like 1 to 2 weeks to sprout, then you would have to account for 72 days or even 79 days if it takes 2 whole weeks to germinate. And so something that I did when I was first planting my garden is I made the mistake of looking at that little number on the back of the seed packet and being like, okay, so I'm going to plant this, and then I'm going to count my days, and then this is when I'm going to be harvesting this, and then this is like the day that I can put my next thing in the ground so that I have my spring garden and then my summer garden. And so far that is not working out according to plan. And my example here for you today is going to be my Spanish black radish. We're going to go out into the garden and I'm going to show you how those are doing, because it has been exactly 55 days since I put those in the ground. I checked on the calendar and I thought, oh, I'll be harvesting these by now. Not so much. Let's go and take a look at how those are doing. Also, while we're out here, can we just appreciate how gorgeous the weather is? I think it's 67 degrees outside. I'm wearing my tank top. I feel totally fine. I'm hoping that this, oh my God. And I'm really hoping that this is not just another fake spring. All right, so the dogs were a little too loud out there. That's why I came in here to explain to you what you're looking at. So basically, you are looking at radish sprouts that are about 2 inches tall. They look really healthy and they are starting to get along, but basically they are nowhere near ready to harvest, even though they are technically at the end of the number of days since planting. Now, these particular radishes had quite a slow start. I planted them on the 14th of January, and then we had a rather unexpected cold spell, and it took them about 2 weeks to germinate, which was longer than they said on the package, and I was for sure that they were definitely not going to just germinate at all, but then they finally did. So they had that slow start. So let's go ahead and add the 2 weeks of germination to that. So if we say, okay, would they be ready 2 weeks from now? 14 days. I'm going to go ahead and say no. These radishes are not going to be ready in 14 days. So even if I had taken into account that germination time, still my number of days to harvest would have been off. And so I want to answer the question, why? If the package says that they're supposed to be ready in this number of days and they're not, why is that happening? I think, again, it has to do with weather conditions. And that number on the back of the packet is the ideal conditions for that plant. If you put it in the ideal conditions, then you're going to get the harvest in the fastest amount of time. However, I did not plant my radishes in the most ideal of conditions. Like I said, there was that cold snap at the beginning, and the weather has been getting kind of cold at night until very, very recently. So I think that they were just growing a lot more slowly than they normally would have if they had been growing in these mild 50 to 70 degree temperatures their whole life. So I'm going to say that maybe they would be ready within another 4 weeks. 4 weeks is what I'm looking at for maybe it's time to reevaluate whether these are ready to harvest or not. And that's put kind of a wrench in my garden planning. So this is not the first thing that I've miscalculated how long it would take to come to maturity. The onions in that bed are another good example of having no idea how long something needed in order to come to maturity. Onion packets will say something in the range of over 100 days, but less than 200 days to maturity, which is like a fairly long growing season, but doable. And I overwintered my onions, right? And so I figured, okay, maybe it'll take a little longer because they're going to go a little dormant over the winter. And I just had no idea that the bulk of that 100 days would have to happen after it warmed up again. So my onions are just now starting to start growing again, starting to put on new fresh growth, and it's going to be much, much later than I thought until they're ready to harvest. We're looking at well past when I had budgeted to have that space open for my tomatoes and peppers. And this is tough. This is going to be a tough call because I think with that, almost everything in that bed where I thought, oh yes, I will have plenty of time to plant these things and then harvest them and then have the bed ready for the tomatoes and peppers when it warms up after the first frost. I'm going to probably have to pull a lot of that stuff early. Definitely the onions are going to have to come out early. The radishes will probably be just about ready. I have some turnips in there. If I give them like an extra week or so, I'm going to give them as much time as I can. But I'm probably going to end up with a lot of small turnips, smaller radishes. I have a little row of carrots in that section that I planted just because I had a few extra seeds I wanted to get rid of. Hadn't really planned on putting carrots in there, and that is again another mistake because the carrots are definitely not going to be ready. And so really what's going to happen is I'm making the decision as a gardener to sacrifice a bigger spring harvest in order to maximize my summer harvest. I definitely won't be able to wait to put my peppers and tomatoes in the ground as long as I would like, given the amount of time it's going to take the rest of that bed to come to harvest. Because the little cups that I've got them in that you saw in the previous video are definitely not going to hold them more than 1 to 2 weeks past what I had originally planned when I planted them. And so just the sad reality of it is that this mistake is going to cost me a bigger harvest. And it's a little disappointing, but I think it's okay. You know, I had planted a few things, especially the radishes, that I wasn't necessarily super excited about, but was wanting to try out. And you know, it's one of those learning experiences. This time next year, I'm going to understand how much time I need to give things, and I'm probably not going to plan to put my tomatoes and peppers in where my onions are already, because the onions, like my garlic, are going to take until about the middle of summer to be ready to pull, to bulb up. And I cannot wait until June to put my tomatoes and peppers in the ground, not in zone 7B. And fortunately I had enough foresight with the garlic to give them the separate smaller bed that I have, to give them the time that they need to come to the maturity. But with the onions, there's just not going to be the time. And so this time next year, watch for me to make better decisions about where I'm planting certain things. Maybe I'll put the onions and garlic in the same bed so that I don't have to worry about how long they take to come to harvest. We'll just have to see. I might be in a different space next year, so I won't go into that too much. But right now, if I was to stay in this space, I would probably be planning a lot better to have that separate space for these things that are going to take a lot longer. And I would probably plan to have the spring garden, the turnips and the radishes and the carrots, I would plan to have those have a little bit more time and not be trying to put these early summer crops in right on top of them. And these are just the things you learn as you go through your gardening experience. And I hope that you seeing me going through this encourages you to not lose hope, and know that it is normal to have these things happen. You can put all of the effort and care that you have into your garden and still end up with situations like this. And it's okay. Next year, you will do better. I will do better. And until next time, guys, I wish you all happy gardening. Thank you guys for watching.